AgTech 360 discusses breakthrough technologies that are impacting growers, businesses, and consumers. Hear from industry and academic experts about what's on the horizon.
Welcome back to AgTech 360 and our Biologicals in Action series. Around the world, researchers are rethinking how we protect crops in the face of limited resources, growing resistance challenges, and increasing biosecurity risks. Today, we're joined by Dr. Louise Thatcher from CSIRO, Australia's Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, where she leads biological crop protection research aimed at advancing sustainable agricultural systems in Australia and around the world. Thank you for joining me, Louise.
Thank you, Adrian. Pleasure.
So to start with some background, many of our listeners are here in the United States, though we do have folks from further afield as well, but many of them will not be familiar with CSIRO. So could you talk a little bit about the organisation and its role in global agricultural research?
The CSIRO is Australia's national science agency. I'm in the Agriculture and Food Research Unit, and we're focused on the innovation system around profitability and sustainability of Australia's food and fibre system. But we also have a global outreach and connection with the global community. We have a national footprint, so we're a large nation. So we have people in Western Australia all the way through to the East Coast, so spanning wheat production, oil seeds, cotton fibre and oil, but also horticulture as well. But the organisation is large. We are diverse, so there are other research units working in minerals and exploration, environment.
So you mentioned your role at CSIRO. Maybe you want to expand on that, but also tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into agriculture and how did that evolve into a role in CSIRO?
My studies at university, it was really a fascination around microbiology and molecular biology and all things small. I actually never studied plant science, but I always had a passion for gardening and food production. Coming from my grandmother, that was a really good gardener, I thought I would go into industrial microbiology and fermentation. But an opportunity came up at the CSIRO in a new plant molecular biology laboratory set up in Perth, which is where I'm from. And I was fortunate enough to get a position there and loved the work. So, I was able to take my passion from microbiology and join it with plants. And, my PhD was understanding the response of plants to biotic stresses.
So you mentioned biologicals. So let's talk a little bit about biologicals in agriculture. So they have been, gaining popularity in many parts of the world, and that's why we're doing this series. But what do you feel is the kind of drivers? What are the drivers behind this interest in natural-based or nature-based biological products for agriculture?
I think in the Australian perspective, there's two main drivers, I would say. One, around sustainability and benefit to the environment. So obviously we want healthy farming systems and healthy people and healthy communities working in those areas. And I think with the biologicals, the benefits that they can have for plant health and soil health and diversity, but then how do we capture that value is something we're trying to achieve. And I guess that leads me into the economic value associated with biologicals. With some of our broadacre farming systems, we have issues with resistance against traditional chemical controls. So we need to provide our growers with new tools that they can use that will be more durable. We understand that biologicals typically work through multiple modes of action. So we think it'd be harder for a pathogen to develop resistance, although we need to understand that and actually study that and determine that that's the case and how we can deploy biologicals. So resistance is one of the major drivers, but also in Australia, we're a largely export orientated agricultural system. We export something like 70% of our agricultural produce. So making sure we can access overseas markets if there's drivers overseas wanting more sustainable agriculture. We know overseas there's mandates on reducing chemical use. So making sure that Australian growers can access those markets in the future.
Tell us a little bit about the research that you or your lab is involved in. What kind of projects do you work on, and what is the intended outcome and impact of that work, say in agricultural systems?
Our lab or our team, I'm a part of the microbial technologies team, and we're focused on discovery of microbes or beneficial microbial products through to improvement and deployment. So in terms of improvement, we span both to the more pure science sort of approach in the laboratory, probably 50% of the work, and then the other 50% is more applied and more industry facing. With the discovery work, a lot of our team use different omics approaches to understand how these microbial agents work and what different natural products they might be able to produce. And then in terms of the applied science is still how do we use that understanding of the microbe and its natural products to apply that in a real world environment on farm. So much of what we're doing now is looking at when we deliver these products into the field, understanding that, okay, it's worked under these conditions and why, it didn't work under these other conditions and why, and is there a scientific intervention there that we can improve the consistency and efficacy.
The North Carolina Plant Sciences Initiative impacts lives through innovative applications and discoveries. By leveraging cutting-edge research and technology, we address global challenges related to agriculture, sustainability, and human health.
And would you say that's the biggest challenge then in terms of moving from that discovery phase through to application and having a product which is really useful, impactful for growers? It's really understanding how it works, when it works, and perhaps when it wouldn't work properly?
Absolutely, I think so. And how do we integrate these products into farming systems? It's not just looking at one season of production, but the benefits long-term from integrating these products, particularly with resistance management.
How do you see, farmers uptaking these products, and how do we convince them or gain trust with them that these products are really better than the alternatives, which may be chemistry or something else, or perhaps are best to integrate into those systems like you were talking about before? How do we scale up the use of these products?
I think it does come to the consistency. Whatever level of efficacy the product achieves, but knowing that's consistent, and then a grower can plan for that and then integrate it into a pest management plan. So we might have to, if there is an opportunity to combine a biological with a traditional chemical solution, then there's certainly options that I think we should be doing.
So turning to a different topic of regulatory approvals, I mean, the regulatory approval system for biologicals does vary in different countries across the world. Can you tell us a little bit about how the regulatory system regards biologicals? And I'm supposing also that Australian growers have to be very mindful of export markets as well. So it's not just what is happening in Australia, but where those produce are going to end up is also important for them to consider.
Because we have quite unique flora and fauna in terms of Indigenous flora and fauna, we have strict quarantine requirements. So in terms of if there's a new solution overseas, if it's a living organism, it may be difficult for us to import that new biological solution into Australia. So that is a challenge. I would completely agree, yeah, if there can be some level of harmonisation in terms of the regulatory requirements around the globe, obviously understanding there'll be differences, but if there can be some level of harmonization and sharing of data packages, whether that's in confidence, obviously. And Australia, we are a smaller market. We may be a large nation, but in terms of the land area that's actually dedicated to crop production is quite small compared globally. So we are a smaller market. So in terms of getting products registered in Australia, it has to be financially sound for a company to do that. And perhaps a way to make it more financially viable is around accessing data packages if the product's been registered somewhere else overseas, to try and streamline the process in Australia.
How the use of biologicals or the types of biologicals maybe will look over the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, how do you see the market evolving? And are there areas maybe of research that you're aware of that might lead to some really interesting outcomes, that perhaps we're not thinking about at the current time?
Yeah, there's a certain pest or disease issue that the grower knows the options available and can just, instead of thinking, what traditional chemistry have I got to use, they've got a suite of products or solutions available and can be using them. I think that the growers are confident in using them. So I guess that comes back again to what I was saying around the consistency. They know they're going to get a level of efficacy from the product, and how to use the products. As I said earlier, the biologicals, they're very broad. We think of chemistries that typically have a single mode of action, but the types of biological products coming out now, there's a whole suite of different modes of action. So I think we have to understand that it is complex, and for growers, they're making so many different types of decisions every day. How do we simplify that process for them? And for us as researchers, helping them in that journey in terms of simplifying the process.
So, Louise, thank you for joining me. Thanks for telling me about your work at CSIRO. I mean, it's really wonderful to hear that even though you're literally the other side of the world, a lot of the things that you're focused on are very similar to what we think about here in the United States. And yeah, I look forward to catching up with you again before too long.
AgTech 360 shares relevant news and breakthroughs with audiences across the globe. Stay connected and join the conversation by following NCPSI on social media.